So what we've really found recently is a new move, if you will, a new development inside the movement for life and family. It's a negative development, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. For the last 20 years or so, we've seen the financial pressure on developing nations to implement gender ideology, abortion, same-sex marriage, all these things by financial pressure, even basically financial blackmail. You've had the UN, the World Bank, Europe, North America threaten countries, developing nations, poor nations, that if they want food aid, they need to give in on all of these things. That sounded horrific in the beginning, but it's been going on now so long and everybody thinks, oh, that's just responsible donations or whatever they think of it. But we saw something analogous to that happen at a national level in the last year, in the United States particularly. Various southern states where they're conservative, where the electorate has voted in a conservative government, they wanted to, because now they have nationally same-sex marriage, they wanted to protect religious freedom so that Christian bakers could say, no, I don't hate you, but I can't cater this wedding because it's a homosexual wedding and it's against my faith. I'm a Christian. I'm sorry. There's a baker over here. So that nurses can say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't administer that euthanasia pill because I'm a Christian. So that a pastor can have a homily about the biblical teachings on homosexuality without getting thrown before some kind of human rights commission or hate crime or what have you. So they wanted to pass, and did pass in some states, legislation for what they called religious freedom. Another aspect of it is to allow companies to say, no, we think that the only people who should be in the women's bathroom is a woman who is biologically a woman. This is a big deal, though, in the United States, where it seems everybody has gone haywire after the whole gender ideology bit. It's become like a new religion. It's become such an accepted, not only theory, but ideology, even more than an ideology. It's become a new religion, a dogma of a new religion that's not proposed the way we propose the Catholic faith, that's imposed much the same way Islam is imposed. So here you have this scenario going on. And amidst the hue and cry that's already going on in Indiana, in Georgia, in Texas, all these southern states where they're more conservative, you had something very interesting happen. You had large companies decide to economically pressure the states to kowtow, to give in, to economically blackmail them in much the same way as the West has been blackmailing developing countries. And so you had massive corporations. In fact, in one of the states, North Carolina, over 80 massive corporations, massive like Apple, Microsoft, Pfizer, the biggest drug company out there. And these major companies threatening to pull jobs from the states, to close factories, to pull factories. You had major tech companies saying they're not going to build a new tech center there that they were going to do. And then in Georgia, for instance, you had the Disney company tell Georgia, we're going to pull out of Georgia. And Georgia's been getting a lot of money from Disney, and so their governor decided to veto the bill that they had passed or that they were thinking of passing for religious freedom because they couldn't afford to have this financial peril happen to them. So you now have the home of the land of the free, where democracy was sort of is supposedly the biggest thing in the world, now taken over state by state into a non-democratic state controlled by large corporations. Like an absolute nightmare. But we've also seen the same thing happen on an individual level. Because you've seen, as I was mentioning earlier, the bakers, the photographers, the people who own bed and breakfasts, even mayors, sportscasters, and sports players all find, sometimes in the case of Kim Davis, a county clerk in Kentucky, jailed. Because she said she was Christian, she was an elected official in her position as county clerk, and she refused to have her signature on marriage licenses for homosexuals because she said that's against the scriptures. She's an evangelical, some kind of Christian, and she just said, no, that's not what my Jesus wants. Very simple woman. But What happened? She was jailed for it. So here you have this storm happening first on an international level. Now we're seeing it on a national level, and we're also seeing it on an individual level, where there's been all of this loss of income for businesses, but also loss of jobs sometimes, and prestige and so on when professors get fired on an individual level. But it's been selected individuals for now. It's been certain people in prominent places, sportscasters, for instance, professors, bed and breakfast owners, mayors. They've had this pressure. But I'm getting more and more convinced that this is going to come down to the level of everyone. That each and every person is going to be required to give obeisance, to bow the knee, if you will, to this new dogma of the new religion that's being imposed. And the way I think it might happen was already predicted in the book of the Apocalypse. In chapters 13 and 14 in the Apocalypse, they describe what many of us has heard about of a certain mark of the beast, they say. A mark that will somehow be on either your hand or your forehead, but it will mean something to do with buying and selling, the scriptures say. And what will happen, they say, the scriptures say, is that people who refuse to get this mark won't be able to buy or sell. So there'll be a real financial impairment, perhaps an impairment to just living a normal life if you don't have this thing. The weird part about it is, in Revelation or in Apocalypse 14, they're very clear that anyone who does receive this mark in the hand or forehead will suffer eternal damnation. So there's something strange about the story. There's nothing intrinsically evil about getting a credit card. There wouldn't be something intrinsically evil about tattooing a credit card on your hand or your forehead either. So what can be so evil about having something that helps you buy and sell that you carry in your hand or forehead that then would mean that to have it you'd go to hell? Unless they suggested that in order to get such a credit card or such a card in your hand or forehead, you have to be a responsible citizen. Or you have to sign on to a document that means you're for human rights. You're not going to persecute people. You're not a hater. You're not a bigot. You're not some irresponsible person who's going to go ahead and who knows, you might steal, rape, and pillage because they want to just make sure that you're a normal, upstanding human being in order to be able to contribute financially to the society and gain from it. It makes sense. It sounds logical. Unless, of course, we have the same human rights documents that for 20 years now at the UN have been engineered to work against life, to work against family. It's an interesting thing that 20 years ago already, the agenda was always to move language into human rights documents at the UN, and this has been the big fight all over the world, move into the human rights documents language that would insist upon gender ideology, homosexuality, and abortion, and make it impossible for any Christian state, let alone Christian person, to sign on to. That, it seems to me, is a very logical way that this could go forward, and it does to me seem like, because we've seen such huge financial pressure all through international level, now national level, and more coming to the individual level, that that might be what we're seeing in the not too distant future.